And Brandon, the last thing we're going to talk about on the podcast today has to do with we have our, first quarterback battle that has been won, if you could call it that, as Texas A&M, the Aggies, man, did this football team lose. They had a just terrible start to their offseason in 2016. And if you were like, Ricky, I completely forgot, tell me what happened. Well, first off, Kyle Allen, their starting quarterback for a while, went ahead and said, fuck it, I'm out of town, chose to go to the Houston Cougars. Then their other quarterback, Kyler Murray, said, fuck it, I'm going to go out of town, and he went to the Oklahoma Sooners. Well, Trevor Knight, the guy who lost the starting job last year for Oklahoma and eventually sat on the bench while Baker Mayfield brought the Sooners all the way to the college football playoff, decided to transfer from Oklahoma to Texas A&M. Well, Brandon, as of 2 hours ago, it is official that Texas A&M Kevin Sumlin has named Trevor Knight the starter for the 2016 opener.
And I'm excited for him. I really am. And I enjoy watching Texas A&M when they're playing. They're another SEC team. And again, I really do enjoy watching the SEC. And they need it. They need a good leader at quarterback. So
they haven't had one since Johnny Football.
Well, they certainly didn't have one last year because it was possibly the worst offensive team Sumlin's ever put out onto the field. They were almost probably last in everything. They were very, very bad, especially in the red zone. They were horrible. They couldn't score. But it's funny because Knight, after a lot of things that happened, he had some injuries. He wasn't very consistent when he was at Oklahoma. And it's funny because he ended up losing a preseason battle to Baker Mayfield, who went on and led the Sooners to the college football playoff this past year, where, of course, they lost to Clemson. Mm-hmm. But Knight, he threw for over 3,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, 19 interceptions. He needs to get those interceptions down and those touchdowns into the 30s. If he can do that, I think he'll be very productive here at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is, of course, going to be having a new offensive coordinator this year, Noel Mazzone. So we're going to see how that works out for them. But I see good things coming from Texas A&M. They're going to have a revamped offense, and someone is not going to allow kind of the dysfunctional offensive things that happened last year to again happen this year. I think Texas A&M turns it around, and they could be a top contender in the SEC this year. We'll see. We will see. It's
going to be interesting because you can't really go off of last year for Trevor Knight. You got to go back to 2014, 2,300 yards, 14-12 touchdown to INT ratio, where you can basically see that as Brandon. It's like what you said. Get the touchdowns up a little bit, bring that interception turnover mark down. If he can do that, then maybe Texas A&M could have a fighting chance, no pun intended, fighting Aggies, a fighting chance to maybe do something in the SEC. The thing that I think is very maybe ironic, maybe interesting is the word I'm going to go for. Who's Texas A&M's first game against in 2016? UCLA. So right away, Trevor Knight is going up against, Saturday, September 3rd at home, is going up against a kid that I love, a kid that I know that you love, Josh Rosen, sophomore season. A kid that had already thrown for 3,670 yards as a freshman, 23 touchdowns, 11 INTs in his first year with Jim Moore's Bruins.
And it's even more interesting because this new offensive coordinator for the Aggies, where has he been last 4 years? UCLA. So we will definitely get a big taste of how it all worked out for both teams game one.
And I hope this isn't a kind of... I hope that Trevor Knight, this isn't just like when I see the headline of, he wins the job for the opener, I go, Okay, so that means he's got the job for now, but if he fucks up, something's going to change. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope he has, and I'm saying he is in Trevor Knight, has a little bit of a longer leash in case he does make a mistake here or there. But I will tell you this. If Trevor Knight comes out and flat out fails for Texas A&M, I'm calling it right here, right now. If he flat out fails and the Aggies have another losing season, Kevin Sumlin's fired at the end of the year.
Yeah,
he's gone.
Yeah, I would think so too. I would think someone's probably out. If they do not do well, and they ended up 8-5 this past year, 5th in the West in the SEC, and yeah, that's not going to do it. That's not going to get it done. That is not going to get it done.
And it was the second straight year that they were 8-5. They were 9-4 before that, and then the 11-2 season in 2012.
I'll be honest. The West is much more difficult than the East. In the West, you got Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, Arkansas, who's going to be getting better, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and then Auburn. But yeah, you're gonna have to be better. You're gonna have to be better than 8-5. You're gonna have to be better than 8-5 because Alabama, well, they won that side at 14-1. Ole Miss was 10-3. Then everyone else was 9-3, 9-4, 8-5, and then 7-6. You got to be at the top. You have got to win more than 9 games. Honestly, you got to win 10.
Well, and where does it all start? Got to say the quarterback position. Look at all 4 teams that were in the college football playoff last year. Connor Cook, he's a guy that could be going in the second round of the NFL draft. Jay Coker, serviceable guy, played well in the system for Alabama Roll Tide. Baker Mayfield, the guy that won the job from Trevor Knight, only played well enough to get them to the college football playoff. And then you look at Clemson, they have a hell of a guy in Deshaun Watson, who many are saying, if he plays well enough this season, could be the number 1 quarterback prospect off the board for 2017. So Texas A&M, if you're a Aggie fan, all you got to look at right now is that quarterback play. If you have the quarterback and he plays well enough, and Trevor Knight plays kind of like he did in 2014, except like we said, bring down the interception numbers, convert those interceptions into touchdowns for your team. You don't want pick sixes going the other way. Obviously, that's going to make you lose the game. That's John Madden for you. But if they have the quarterback, they may be able, that's half the battle right there, to be able to compete in the SEC and maybe even get to the college football playoff.
Yep, I absolutely think so. Expectations are up after an impressive spring performance by Trevor Knight. I think that Texas A&M Nation is really got to be excited, and I think they've got high hopes for this season.
Before I wrap it up, I got to ask you the question. It's a question that you hate. Give me a prediction for Rosen versus Knight. Who are you giving the early edge to?
I'm going to give the early edge to Rosen just because we know him. We've seen him more than what we've seen of Knight. That does not mean that it could change. I might be like you, flavor of the weekie.
Well, this is just the opening bet.
This is the opening.
Opening line from Brandon Swanson.
I'm going to go with Rosen because again, it's another year under his belt. I liked him last year. I thought
I love Josh Rosen. I can't wait for this year.
I thought that he made too many mistakes, but he'll clean it up.
Remember that game against BYU?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
That was when I was riding all over the BYU bandwagon.
Oh my gosh, I was so sick of that.
I was all over the BYU bandwagon. But that's going to do it for the Primetime Podcast this week. Go ahead, let us know down in the comment section what you thought of anything that we talked about on today's show. Go ahead and follow us on Twitter. I'm at Ricky Widmer. Brandon is at young_swan19. Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. Hey, speaking of at Most Valuable Pod, you can also follow us on the Snappy Chatty. I believe that's what it's called. Most Valuable Pod is what we are on Snapchat as well. If you're on SoundCloud, hit the heart and repost button. Follow us. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. Brandon, before I post this out, you look like you want to say something.
I was going to say, and folks, just in case you didn't know, we hit 1,000,
what
baby!
Up?
What up, what up?
And thank you guys for helping us hit 1,000. We couldn't have done it without the fans like you that we get to talk to through our computers every single day. Thank you guys for checking out the Primetime Podcast. And as always, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this MVP podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Most Valuable Pod for more great podcasts.